Are you ready to untangle from your past, recover from heartbreak, and revive your life? This is Soul CPR with your host, Ann Papayoti. We've all had soul-crushing experiences and lost ourselves in our pain, but there is a way out. On this podcast, Amazon best-selling author, award-winning life coach, and advice columnist Ann Papayoti helps us navigate the path from heartbreak to healing. So now, please welcome the host of Soul CPR, Ann Papayoti.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in today. If it's your first time, welcome to Soul CPR, and if you're a regular listener, then certainly welcome back. I'm your host, Ann Papayoti, and today we're going to talk about something deeply uncomfortable, but absolutely necessary. We're going to talk about the patterns behind predator relationships. Now, with the headlines exploding around the P. Diddy investigation, many people are shocked by the allegations of manipulation and sexual coercion and the abuse of power and control. But for survivors of these kinds of relationships, the story feels disturbingly familiar. Now, this episode isn't about celebrity gossip. It's about understanding the psychology of coercive control, how predators identify vulnerable targets, and the subtle steps they take to isolate and to test and to reshape and dominate their victims. And often it's behind a facade of charm or glamour and success. Now, whether you've experienced this dynamic yourself or want to recognize the red flags in someone else's life, today, we're going to peel back the layers and give you tools to protect your peace and reclaim your power. So let's dive in. Let's start by talking about something a lot of people don't understand about abusive relationships, especially the kind that happen behind closed doors in glamorous and high profile, or even those dream come true, seemingly, settings and relationships. First of all, predators do not hunt at random. They're not just looking for anyone. They're looking for someone specific. So just like a scam artist doesn't try to con everyone, predators in relationships, emotional, sexual, or psychological, are scanning for certain traits that make a person more susceptible to control. And let's be clear, this isn't about blaming the victim. It's about understanding how manipulation works so you can recognize it and protect yourself or educate someone you care about. So, who do predators target? Well, first of all, it could be someone with unmet emotional needs. This could be a person who grew up never feeling good enough, or maybe they had a critical parent or were neglected or always had to earn love by being useful in some way. And when someone like that gets love bombed or praised or treated like they really matter, it's quite intoxicating. They finally feel seen, often for the first time. But that vulnerability is seen by a predator as prey, and they move in fast. Now, another type of person is someone who's already isolated in some way. So predators love people who do not have strong support systems. So maybe you're far from home. Maybe you're new to a city or a job. Maybe you don't have a lot of family or friends in your corner. The less backup you have, the easier it is for them to become your whole world. Now, this may be resonating with some of you already. You may be saying, that was me, or that is me, or I see that in someone I love or I care about. So just keep listening and pay attention. Another type of person a predator may see as potential prey is someone who may be financially insecure or dependent on someone else. So predators often use money to trap and control. They'll offer help to pay your bills or fund your dreams, and then it becomes, look what I've done for you. You owe me. And they use their generosity as a form of leverage, if you will. And once you're dependent on them, leaving starts to feel impossible. And another form of vulnerability may be just having ambition and idealism. And this one surprises people, but the truth is, someone chasing big dreams is very attractive to a manipulator, especially in industries like music modeling, entertainment, entrepreneurship, because if you're hungry for opportunity, they're going to dangle it like a carrot. I can make you famous. I can open doors. You just have to trust me. But the cost of that trust gets higher and higher. And finally, and this is a big one, and perhaps the biggest one, someone with a history of trauma or past abuse. Because if you've been mistreated before, you may be less likely to notice red flags because dysfunction feels familiar. You may think this is just how love is. Or worse, you may start self-blaming. It's my fault that this has changed from the love bombing to the next phase, which we'll talk more about a little later in the show. But predators exploit that confusion that you start to feel, and they're skilled at packaging control as protection or emotional manipulation as passion. Think about that. Of course, you're confused. They convince you they're protecting you as they isolate you, and they're emotionally manipulating you and calling it passion. Here's the point with all of this. Predators are calculating and they're watching and they're listening for your pain points, and they start testing your boundaries. And most of all, they're choosing people who shine in some way but don't quite know how brightly yet. Because if you did not know your worth, if you did know your worth, and if you did feel whole, you'd walk away the moment the mask slipped, right? But if you did not quite know your worth and you did not quite feel whole, you might just keep staying. So let me tell you this right now, though. Being vulnerable does not make you weak. It makes you human. And being trusting doesn't make you naive. It makes you open-hearted. But being aware, that's your superpower. The more we understand how predators operate, the faster we can shut it down for ourselves, for our children, for our friends, and for the younger version of us, for the vulnerable version of us who didn't know better. If this is resonating with you and you're watching live, put a comment and let us know. Now, seduction and grooming. This is when control looks like love. Now that we understand how predators choose their targets, let's talk about what happens next. And this is where it really starts to get tricky, because it doesn't start with abuse, it starts with seduction. And I don't mean romantic or sexual seduction, I mean psychological seduction, We call this the grooming phase. This is where the predator lays the foundation. They're not just pulling you in, they're shaping you, molding your reality, preparing you to accept future control. But the catch is, it all looks like and feels like love. So you may be familiar with the term love bombing. Well, this is the hook. The first stage is love bombing. And this can look like or sound like constant compliments, numerous texts and phone calls and lavish gifts, big declarations of love early on. Never felt this way about somebody before you. Talking about your future together before you even know their middle name. It feels magical. You may convince yourself it's something like fate, like something out of a movie. You think, wow, somebody finally sees me. But here's the truth. This intensity is not intimacy. It's strategy. They're creating a fast bond so you get emotionally hooked before you have time to question things. Does this make sense? I've lived this. I experienced this. So I can relate to those of you who have as well. Next comes what's known as mirroring. And what we mean by mirroring is that they reflect back the version of you you've always wanted to be, what you've wanted to hear or needed to hear about yourself. You say you've always wanted to be a writer, suddenly they're your biggest fan. You say your ex never listened, suddenly they're the best listener you ever met. They tailor themselves to your dreams and wounds. Not because they are that person, but because they know it's what will get you to trust them. And once you trust them, that's when the real grooming begins. And this is when it becomes all about shaping your reality. This is when they begin to reshape your beliefs, especially around sex, power, loyalty, and especially your self-worth. And this can look like introducing sexual behaviors that may feel uncomfortable for you out of what was your norm, but making you feel prudish if you're not going to participate with them. They may test your reactions to control or jealousy and then, laugh it off as just kidding. They may say things like, this is just how adults do things. If you really loved me, you'd try this or that. They may begin to make you question your gut instincts, creating this self-doubt. And then next thing you know, you'll start justifying their behavior and you'll start bending just a little at first. And this is when you come to a turning point. Because what makes grooming so dangerous is that the abuse doesn't feel like abuse at first. A boundary is crossed and they apologize so beautifully. You feel weird about something, but they convince you you're overreacting. You start to change, maybe how you dress, what you like, who you talk to, and it feels like it's your choice, but it's not. Little by little, you stop recognizing yourself. Now let's pause here and breathe. If you're listening and thinking, wait, I have experienced this, I've felt this, and I didn't see it for what it was, please know that it's common and it's not your fault. It is time for our first commercial break. Don't go far. And when we come back, we're going to continue looking behind the scenes of predator relationships. So don't go far. We'll be back with more Soul CPR.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them. We discover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to Soul CPR today. We are talking about the darkness of predator-prey relationships, coming straight from the headlines because of the P. Diddy, Cassie Ventura case that is happening now. Look, we were talking about the grooming phase, and this phase is designed to be confusing. It's designed to feel romantic, to kind of feel like destiny. But it's not love, it's a setup. True love does not require you to shrink. It doesn't punish you when you say no. It doesn't push you past your comfort zone and call it growth. It certainly doesn't ask you to trade your safety for connection. So let's talk about the signs for recognizing grooming. There are a few that we could all pay attention to. First of all, things are moving too fast emotionally and or physically. You feel overwhelmed even when things seem good. Would be another sign. You're being encouraged to do things that don't sit right with you. Your gut's telling you this isn't, I would typically not choose to do this. Your concerns are brushed off or they're turned back on you, like something's wrong with you to be concerned about something. Another sign would be you feel like you owe them your loyalty, even when they've made you feel uncomfortable, okay? Now remember this, grooming isn't about seduction, it's about conditioning you to ignore your instincts, to abandon your boundaries, and to feel dependent on someone who planned it that way from the start. This is hard truth, right? But it's truth that can set you free. All right, so we've talked about how predators don't just randomly choose their targets. They profile them. Then they seduce them through intense love bombing and grooming that's disguised as romance, mentorship, and sometimes even spiritual connection. But once that emotional hook is in place, Once the mask of charm has done its job, the next phase begins. The shift. And this part, it's subtle at first. This is when the predator begins to test your boundaries, not to get to know them, but to break them. And testing begins slowly and strategically. You'll notice little things at first. Maybe they start showing signs of jealousy, not just over exes, but over your friends, your family, even your dreams. And maybe they tease you in ways that feel a little cruel. They might say, "You're too sensitive," or "It was just a joke." But whatever they said did hurt you. You just don't know if it's okay to say that anymore because the reaction you get doesn't feel good. And that's exactly what they're testing. Will you speak up? Will you pull away? Will you stand up for yourself? Or will you bend and acquiesce based on their behavior? And this is when the cycle of reward and punishment begins. And you hear that? Reward and punishment. And that's what makes this phase so confusing. It's not all bad. They might still be loving, affectionate, and generous. But now that kindness has a price. If you obey, you're rewarded. If you resist, you're punished. Punishment might look like the silent treatment or withdrawing affection or starting an argument to throw you off, humiliating you privately or worse, publicly. And it will advance to that eventually, or accusing you of being too emotional or crazy. And after each punishment, they usually circle back with an apology or an excuse, especially if you are resistant to receiving the punishment. "I was just stressed. I didn't mean it. You know I love you." And maybe they do something nice afterward, take you out, say something sweet, or maybe even cry and promise to change. And you begin to think maybe you overreacted or misunderstood. And you may even tell yourself, if I just try a little harder, maybe we'll get back to how it used to be. Because remember in the beginning, the love bombing, they've tried to show you how wonderful they can be. But it didn't last, did it? It was never real. It was a setup. And this is the shift into the real dynamic, power and control. And what starts to happen now, the mask will begin to slip. You'll notice these changes in their tone, in their eyes, their energy. They don't pretend as much anymore. They've already tested your tolerance. And if you stayed, guess what? We teach people how to treat us. They now know they can escalate. The predator begins to, you've heard the term gaslight. They gaslight you, which means they make you doubt what you saw, heard, or felt. They twist and turn the truth. They control the narrative. And that does what? It undermines your confidence. They say things like, "You'd be nothing without me." They shame you for your past or your body, your choices, anything to undermine your self-confidence. And then they'll push your sexual boundaries even further. They'll pick fights when you try to reclaim your voice. And what keeps you hooked is the memory of who they were in the beginning. That person who said all the right things, who made you feel chosen and seen and adored. And you think what? You think you're fighting for love, but what you're really doing is fighting to survive inside a cycle of abuse. Listen closely. Again, this is not your fault. By the time you're in this phase, you've already been groomed to second guess yourself. You've already been conditioned to equate love with discomfort. You've already learned that speaking up gets you punished and staying quiet earns you temporary peace. But this isn't love. This is a power system, and you've been drafted into a game you never agreed to play. But here's what I want you to know. The moment you start to see this shift is the moment your healing can also begin, because awareness is power. And once you recognize that love shouldn't feel like walking on eggshells, that your no shouldn't cost you affection, the word no is a boundary. And that respect doesn't come with conditions. You can begin to come back to yourself. You can. Look, this episode is heavy, I know, but these conversations are like oxygen. You're not alone, and if any part of this is hitting home, stay with me. The truth is hard, but again, it will set you free. We got to talk about the isolation and the identity breakdown and losing yourself to stay safe, which is what happens next if you cannot get out at the point we just mentioned. So if you've been profiled and groomed and seduced and tested, and now something even more damaging can begin to take root, you start to disappear, not all at once, but piece by piece. Because to stay in the relationship at this point, you have to become someone else. This is the stage of isolation and identity breakdown, one of the most painful, confusing, and disorienting parts of a predator relationship. Here's the thing, predators do not want witnesses. So once they've built up enough control, they start quietly or not so quietly removing your support system. And at first it may seem innocent. They'll start tearing down the people in your life. Your best friend doesn't like me. Why do you need her opinion? Your family's toxic anyway. Let's just keep our relationship private. Why do you need anyone else when you have me? Those kinds of things, right? Little by little, you stop sharing things with friends, or you stop returning calls. You start making excuses, not because you're being rude, but because you're protecting, you think, the relationship. Or worse, you're protecting yourself from the fallout of what people might say if they saw the truth. I know I did this. This is exactly what the predator wants, to be your only source of connection, comfort, and more specifically, reality. Because when they isolate you, they control the story of your life. When your world has shrunk in this way, they can do the work of dismantling who you were before they met you. But remember, they put you on a pedestal in the beginning. But now they're going to chip away at your confidence. You're not that smart. You just got lucky. You used to be hot. Now you're just lucky that I stay with you. Nobody else would put up with you the way I do. They mock you. They mock your goals. They undermine your talents. They criticize you, your clothes, your laugh, your past. Until one day you look in the mirror and don't recognize the person staring back. You were once vibrant. Now you're walking on eggshells. You were once independent. Now you check their mood before you speak. You were once full of dreams. Now you're just trying to survive the day. This is not weakness. This is the intended outcome of psychological abuse. Because when a predator breaks down your identity, it becomes easier to control your actions and harder for you to imagine a life without them. And this is where the trauma bond tightens. You're isolated, you're unsure of yourself, and ironically, you become more dependent on the very person hurting you. They've become both your abuser and your comforter. You tell yourself they didn't mean it. You tell yourself they're just hurting. You tell yourself, I just need to be better. But the truth is, you're stuck in a cycle that was designed to trap you. And this is how powerful coercive control can be. It doesn't just break your spirit, it rewires your reality. Here's what I want you to remember. Your essence, your true self is never fully erased. It may be buried and it may be bruised, but it's still there. You're not crazy. You're not weak. You are not the things they said you were. You are someone who has survived manipulation and mind games and control. And that takes strength most people will never understand. It's time for our next break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about how predators respond to losing control and why reclaiming your power is often the most dangerous, but also the most liberating thing you'll ever do. So stay with me. You're not alone. We'll be back with more Soul CPR in just a moment.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant, like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic on the BBM Global Network, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back, everyone. I was just telling Alex, my engineer, during the break that I feel like I'm preaching today, and that's okay. Sometimes we've really got to, try to tough love some things and some topics. And I'm telling you that this is a topic so near and dear to my heart, not only because I lived it, but because so many people I meet, whether it's in my support group or in my private practice, have experienced this or are experiencing it, and they feel stuck or they're struggling to recover. And I'm telling you that you can. And so awareness is always the first step to change. And then it becomes choice. And then it's dedication to moving forward and taking the steps. So first of all, know you're not alone. I know that a lot of humiliation and a lot of shame will keep people stuck. Let that go. Let that go. All right, we've covered the grooming, the boundary testing, the isolation, and the erosion of identity. And if you've gone through all of that, at this point, you've probably started to feel like a shell of yourself, but maybe something inside you, a whisper, a gut instinct, your inner voice can begin to rise. You can start to resist. You can start to question them. You ask for space. Maybe you simply stop saying yes to every demand. Maybe you're just numb. And that, my friend, is when the mask comes all the way off, because for a predator, resistance equals rebellion. And in their mind, rebellion must be punished. So they may escalate because their control is under threat, and predators rely on power, not love. So when you threaten their control, their entire system starts to crack. And they don't respond with humility. They respond with punishment. This can take many forms, and it almost always escalates in intensity in the more you try to break free. Things like emotional punishment could be the silent treatment or stonewalling or withdrawal of affection. Let them. Verbal abuse, gaslighting, name-calling, accusations, blame shifting. Let them. Public shaming, turning others against you, friends, family, even online followers or whatever you may have, depending on what you do. Let them. No reaction is a response. Financial control, freezing your bank account, withholding access to money, or trying to sabotage your job. They can try, but the more you let go of trying to appease them and the more you step into your power, the less they can do. The more informed you are, the more aware you are, the more you can take control of all of this. They'll try sexual coercion, using intimacy as manipulation or punishment, or threatening you if they have photos or videos to release them to somehow to embarrass you. Threats against your safety, your children, your reputation, your future. Let me tell you, the National Domestic Abuse Hotline will help you. Go to thehotline.org for support. You do not have to go through that alone, and you do not have to, and always call 911 if you ever feel in danger at any time. Do not allow threats. Do not think of them as empty. First of all, take them seriously. This isn't random, by the way. This punishment, this is deliberate. It's meant to wear you down so you give up your fight and you go back to being easier to control. Now, here's the twisted part. Even if the abuse intensifies, you may still feel emotionally tied to the predator. And this is called trauma bonding, where the cycle of abuse and intermittent reward creates this powerful psychological dependency. You're scared of them, but you also crave their approval because you haven't healed yet. You hate what they do, but you might still love the version of them you first met. You want to leave, but you don't feel safe or strong enough to do so. So again, in North America, thehotline.org, you can get 24/7 support. Wherever you're listening around the world, find your local support. There are shelters and there are nonprofits who can help you. This emotional tug of war is not your fault, though. It's not weakness. It's not confusion. It is conditioning. Remember that. And it's been building over time. So it's going to take some time also to reprogram yourself. Predators escalate because it's worked before. They believe if they punish you hard enough, you're going to submit. But if you're still listening right now, I want you to hear this again. There is a way out, and it begins with this truth. You're not crazy. You're not overreacting. You are not powerless. The pain you feel when you resist them, that's your gut and your body remembering your worth. That's your spirit saying no more. That's your soul rising. The cost of resistance might feel high, but the cost of staying in a cycle of coercive control and abuse is your entire self. And you deserve so much more than survival. Going back to what inspired this episode, the court case, the very public court case of Sean Combs and Cassie Ventura. Before her association with Sean Diddy Combs, Cassie Ventura was finding success in modeling and the entertainment industries. According to various sources on the web, Cassie began modeling at the young age of 14, and by 16 was already appearing in major publications like 17 and Delia's catalogs. She modeled for brands like Abercrombie and Fitch, Adidas, Clean and Clear, Delia's, and Target. She was signed by Wilhelmina Models Agency, a big agency in New York. By the age of 16, she was walking the runways in New York Fashion Week. She had an early music career with Ryan Leslie. She had a top 3 Billboard hit before she ever met Sean Combs. She was a national twirling champion, 5-time grand champion twirler. She was the first student body president of her middle school. She composed an original opera called The Two Faces of Friendship at the age of 12. She was a piano player and a dancer. So my point is, remember what I said? They look, it's like breaking a horse. They target and they find someone on their way. And they want somebody in their collection. Who can I break? What was her vulnerability? I don't know. But this isn't about them. The point is, it can happen to anyone. All right, healing. This part of the journey is raw, but it's also sacred, because on the other side of the darkness is where you find yourself whole, worthy, and free again. And I made it, and that's how I know you can too. Through the manipulation, the testing, the isolation, the punishments, you can find your way here to the edge of truth and beginning healing. If you've survived a predator relationship, whether it lasted months or decades, you already know this. Freedom is not just about leaving. It's about reclaiming who you are. It still took me a few years after divorce to truly break up with my ex. Divorce and breakup are two very different things. The control still existed. He treated me as if I still belonged to him, as if he owned me. And I'm the one who had to build myself up and create the boundaries. Even once the abuser is gone, their voice may live in your head. That was my truth. Their lies might still echo in your self-talk. Their conditioning may still show up in your other relationships. Here's what I want you to carry forward. Healing is not about becoming who you were before. It's about becoming who you were always meant to be before the world tried to convince you otherwise. And it's going back and unearthing who you were and getting back onto the same path that you were supposed to travel before it was derailed, if that makes sense. You have to grieve, but we have to grieve without shame to heal. We're going to grieve a relationship even if it was toxic. We can grieve the person we thought they were. We can grieve the future we thought we'd have. We can grieve the version of ourselves that tried so hard to make it work. And in so doing, we have to let ourselves cry. We have to let ourselves feel angry. We have to let ourselves feel it all. Because emotional honesty truly is the doorway to healing. We have to reconnect with our inner voice, our intuition, because after a long period of coercive control, it's going to be very faint and unreliable. And everybody tells me, and it was the same for me, I don't know how to trust myself again. But I promise, getting in touch with our inner voice, our intuition, it's still there. And we can start with some simple questions. What do I need today? And listen and fulfill it. What do I like? Rediscover yourself. What makes me feel calm, strong, or lit up inside? And these may seem like small things, but they're actually revolutionary, because each time you honor your own voice, you're rebuilding trust with yourself. And then rebuild your boundaries without apology. Boundaries are not about keeping people out. They're about keeping yourself safe inside. You have the right to say no without explanation, to take up space, to walk away from what dishonors you, and to heal at your own pace. You have the right to change your mind. Boundaries don't make you difficult. Boundaries are preventative, protective, Healing's not just about what you walk away from, it's about what you walk toward as well. So this may require starting small, surrounding yourself with safe people, even if it's just one. Do things that make you feel competent and alive and aligned with your truth. And consider working with a coach or a therapist or support group so that you do have someone who has your back. This is where Soul CPR lives. It's in the space of kind of that resurrection and rebirth, helping you reconnect with the truth of who you are, not the identity that was shaped by abuse, but the essence that survived it. Remember, you're not broken and you're not too late. You're not too much. You're healing and you're rising. You're coming home to yourself, if you will. It's time for our third and final break. When we come back, I want to answer a question that I often have asked. Are these predators born or are they made? And I asked my friend and licensed therapist, Donna Earle, who's worked with many trauma victims, this question. And I'll share what she had to say. Don't go far. We'll be back with more Soul CPR.
Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network. Dr. RC will share extraordinary resources and services that promote educational success, as well as making a difference in the lives of all social workers, as well as the lives of children, adolescents, and teens of today. She will have open discussions addressing many of the issues that we face about our youth and how being employed in the uniquely skilled profession of social work for over 18 years has taught invaluable lessons through her personal experiences. She will also provide real-life facts, examples, and personal stories that will confirm that why serving as a child advocate is extremely beneficial when addressing the needs of the whole child. Listen live to Dare to Soar, Saturdays 10 a.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network, and tune in radio as Dr. RC will provide thought-provoking information that will empower, encourage, and strengthen students, families, and communities across our nation. You can also visit her at soarwithkatie.com.
Welcome back to the final segment of today's episode of Soul CPR. We're talking about predatory behavior, and I checked in with my good friend Donna Earle, who is a licensed professional therapist, and I asked her the question, what causes predatory behavior? And she said that it's not as simple as nurture versus nature. Are they born that way or made? She says quite a complex issue, but most contemporary research supports an interactional model that both nature, biology, genetics, and temperament, and nurture, early environment, and traumas, learning histories can contribute to the development of these kind of behaviors. And she said certainly that genetic predispositions may influence traits like impulsivity, aggression, or low empathy. And she said that we know that generational trauma is transmitted via genetics, and these genes are triggered and activated in utero in response to the traumas the mom is experiencing while pregnant. So whatever trauma she's experienced. And then environment and adverse childhood experiences can turn on genetic predispositions through a process known as DNA methylation. I may have pronounced that incorrectly. She said neurological abnormalities such as frontal lobe dysfunction from birth or due to traumatic brain injury are linked to poor impulse control and judgment as well. Certain mood disorders, bipolar or major depressive disorder with psychosis affect judgment and impulse control, and antisocial personality traits or psychopathy show heritable components and are a factor. And of course, narcissistic personality disorder is the one we most often hear about and talk about in some of these types of relationships would fall into that as well. Environmentally, she said childhood trauma such as neglect, abuse, especially sexual abuse, is often found in the histories of many predators. They repeat the cycle as a learned behavior. Again, it becomes generational trauma. And then there are distorted beliefs and behaviors developed from exposure to violence, early exposure to sexual content or behavior, as well as the disorganized and otherwise poor attachment as a result of exposure, experienced abuse, or witnessing of abuse. Something like dad abuses mom, or dad, brother, cousin, uncle sexually abuses child. Those types of scenarios being witnessed in the home. And then there's modeling or living in an environment where coercion, domination, power, and control is normalized. This can condition predatory behavior as well. She says sexual predators specifically, not all people who commit sexual offenses fit a single profile. Some may have deviant arousal patterns. Others may offend due to power and control dynamics, while some act out of impulse or opportunism or distorted thinking. So there's a lot of different reasons here, right? Nature or nurture. Most experts agree it is both, but nurture often plays a more significant role, especially in terms of preventing and rehabilitation. But risk is not destiny, Donna says. Someone may have risk factors without becoming a predator if they have protective experiences, empathy development, healthy relationships, and accountability. And an important caveat she mentioned is that most people who experience trauma or abuse do not become abusers. And not all sexual predators have diagnosable mental illnesses. So things to think about. There's also, I would add, cultural and social reinforcement. Society has to play a role too, because predators often thrive in environments where misogyny, patriarchy, or entitlement are normalized. And this might be something we've seen or we keep hearing in the trial of Sean Combs. Charisma, success excuse bad behavior sometimes, and then the victims are blamed or silenced. Accountability is often rare. We see this even in political figures, especially for powerful men, right? This is why there are so many predator stories. There's a network of silence, and these individuals aren't just manipulative. They often build these systems of power that protect them. But hear this, abuse is always a choice. Understanding what creates a predator can help you make sense of how this happened to you if you were the prey. But it should never shift the blame away from the person who caused the harm. And why this matters for healing. As a survivor, you may look for reasons to justify what happened. Maybe they were broken. Maybe if I loved them enough, they'd change. I hear this all the time. But when you understand that predators are often skilled, intentional, and rewarded for their abuse, you can let go of the illusion that it was your job to fix them. Your healing doesn't depend on figuring them out. It depends on choosing yourself. And that is your takeaway for today. Your healing depends on choosing yourself and letting go of responsibility for healing them. You can't. You absolutely can't. So as we conclude this episode of Soul CPR, Healing Out Loud, please remember that healing is not a linear journey. It is a process of profound transformation. And if today's episode resonated with you, please do share this podcast with someone who may need a lifeline of their own. Subscribe, rate, and leave a review to help us reach more hearts. You can always connect with me through my website at skyviewcoaching.com or on social media. You'll find me on Facebook at Skyview Coaching, or on all the other platforms at Ann Papiotti, Instagram, LinkedIn, and X. I don't know if we've got my QR code or my, up there today. Alex, if you have that, if not, no worries. It'll be in the show notes. Let me know your thoughts, your stories, and the topics you'd like to explore in future episodes, because this show is for you, and I'd like to bring the topics that you'd like to hear more about. Until next time, may you find strength in your vulnerability and courage in your journey. Thank you for listening. Breathe deeply, love openly, and live soulfully. Good day, everyone.
This has been Soul CPR with host Ann Papayotti. Breathe life back into your spirit with each episode, where she and special guests explore the relationships that hurt us and discover that healing can only begin with you. Tuesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network.